Richard, thanks very much for joining us today. Really pleased to have you. And the plan is that we can try and give as much advice to organisers or experienced organisers who deal with speakers perhaps every day or every week, and think about how they can improve their briefing and how they can improve the environment and the atmosphere for delivering great content. I wanted to jump straight in by saying, should we say to speakers that you've got to give bullet points the bullet?
Yeah, thanks, William, and thanks for the introduction. It's really great actually to talk about it from this point of view, because it's interesting. I've been doing this now for 19 years, working with different conference organisers around the world. I tend to go to around sort of 75 to 100 conferences a year, and I see a whole range of different things that people do. But I think one of the biggest changes that a conference organiser could do to radically change the look, feel, and the expectation of the speakers is to simply draw a line and say no more bullet points, and even describe it further than that and say 0 words on any slides. There's a way of putting it, I think, that makes that more attractive, which is in the wording towards the speaker, saying, as I'm sure you would expect in this day and age, we've got speakers of great quality just like yourselves, and so we're encouraging everybody else to make sure there are no words on slides, no bullet points. And if you get any pushback, or if you want to get a sense of the science behind this, a fabulous book to read on the topic is Brain Rules by Dr. John Medina, in which he talks about the pictorial supremacy effect, where he talks about an experiment that happened in Washington in the US. And it had an audience of 600 people. 300 of them saw a speaker with bullet points and words on a screen. And then another 300 saw the same speaker give the same talk with just images on the screen. And 3 days later, they were tested on how much information they could remember. And the people who saw the words and bullet points on the screen could remember 10% on average of the information. So 3 days after that conference, they'd forgotten 90% of what they heard. The other people who saw the images could remember 65% of the information 3 days later. The only change being delete all the bullet points, delete all the words, and have the images. So it's far, far better for your audience, after all the time and money expended, all the time invested by them, to do that. But what it also does to the speakers that you're working with is it forces them to raise their game, to say, okay, well, clearly this event is being done where I have to bring my A game, I have to think creatively, I have to deliver something in stories, and I have to know my content. I can't do a slide gimmick where I just sort of talk around the bullet points on the screen. I must come up with something that's far more engaging. And when I've seen this done, I've seen it done at a few events now, everybody brings their A game. Where I saw it done, taken to a further extent, where there was a session with 1,000 people in the audience. We were on a round stage, so there's people sitting all around us. There were no lecterns allowed, no notes allowed, and no words allowed on the screen. And so nobody going into that event from the internal speakers at this company had ever experienced something like that. I coached a lot of them about it before the day, but everybody spent weeks preparing to make sure that what they delivered on the day would be fantastic, because they didn't have a safety net of bullets on the screen. So I think it's a fantastic way for people to step things forward.
That's helpful. So, I mean, earlier I covered my 5 key points that I suggested event organisers think about when they're looking to change the way that they deal with the speakers. And I just wanted to ask your opinion on the 4th one, because I had here, there's a quid pro quo. You have to give something in return to get brilliant content. And in the example you've just given, people were expected to deliver a wonderful presentation without bullet points, without a lectern, and they had to spend a lot more time developing that content. What can we give in return to make sure that we give value to speakers who are spending much more time on delivering the content at our conferences and our other learning events?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and the key question really needs to go towards the speaker, I think, where along the lines of what is the greatest value that we can give you, along the lines of, this is what we can offer, but we want to make it work for you. What is the greatest possible value we can give you? Because from the best speakers that I know, and people who are doing this all the time, what I've heard them say, it's not just about the fee. So yes, it's fabulous to get a big high fee, but the good speakers I know will either do a job for their fee or for nothing. They don't tend to quibble around the middle space. And so if they're doing something for nothing, it will need to be something that meets their needs or values. So if it's for a charitable piece to inspire people where they care about giving back and it's going to be a good opportunity, then they may do that. But then there's other opportunities of sort of figuring out the extra things you can offer. Along the lines of, saying, we will really happily build up your profile, write articles about you, we'll include you in press releases that are going out to publications. We'll have a page for you on our website. These are all the things that we can do for you. What is going to be the most valuable for you? Would you like to have a table at the event? Would you like to have this? That's all of the opportunities which we feel will give you the greatest thing. And it's important to state what you can do, because you might get some speakers saying, well, I'd really like to know the names and telephone numbers of everyone coming, which you clearly can't do. But to offer that sense of, what is going to be the greatest thing that we can do for you right now that's going to make this valuable? Because then at that point, people think, great, I really will deliver on this because I know that I'm getting something, really rewarding in return. And it's important also to say, to deliver on those promises. I've had so many speakers across the year, conference organisers across the years who've said to me, this would be a great opportunity for you, Richard, to come to this event. Oh, honestly, it's going to be great. It could lead to so much work for you if you come and do this for nothing. We're not going to give you anything else in return, but if you're good enough on the stage, you'll get bookings. And if someone's good enough on stage, they're getting paid for that work anyway. So it's better to figure out what are they going to gain from this and really support them to get that value.
That's really good points there. I think one you mentioned at the start, and it's not just about the fee, but it's quite common when I have conversations with other conference organisers. They wear the fact that they don't have to pay their speakers with some kind of badge of honour, as if to say, we don't actually pay any of our speakers. And I often think, well, I bet the content that you get isn't great, and you should be thinking about paying speakers, and that should be the mix. Now, if you can give a lot of additional benefits to your speakers, fine, but really you should be thinking, do I really want? Can I expect someone to deliver great content if I'm not even paying, a couple of £100 for a fee? And I would like organisers to kind of start there, unless they feel that they've got something of huge value to add. I think we're in a better situation if we're saying to our speakers, no, we're going to pay you, or we've got a fee that you can donate to charity, but make it some kind of contractual arrangement. And I think simply by doing that, you're likely to increase the quality of the content. And I agree completely. If you say you're going to do stuff, you better do it, or you're going to be in trouble getting the speakers of quality. Absolutely.
And there's one extra piece actually to add into that, which you reminded me of, which is to give the speakers an exceptional experience. So there are certain people who, when they talk about an event coming up, like yourself, where I think, I know that the event is going to be an exceptional experience. I know that the person running this will listen to the needs of the speakers, choose a really fantastic venue, they'll have great AV support, and I'll be able to come in and feel a fabulous experience is happening. There's going to be really high quality photo and videos produced of the event, and I'll enjoy the entire experience. So where it's very simple to say yes to some events. Other events where, I've had the experience of it being a huge hassle in terms of the communication back and forth, and there was budget cuts around the venue, and the other speakers were not that great, and people didn't seem to be in a good space when I was speaking to the audience, where I think, well, no matter what the fee is, I'm not really sure I want to go back to that space. So creating an exceptional experience, I think, really helps engender that sense that you will get great speakers, and those speakers will recommend other great speakers they know to come along.
Well, I think that's almost a list of the practical things that event organisers can do to help speakers deliver content. You've mentioned the quality of other speakers, a really good venue, and AV. Are there any other practical things that you think event organisers should be concentrating on, so at the end of the day they can say, I did everything I could to make sure the content was as good as possible?
Yes, I think that there's definitely a place, and it so rarely happens, where, I've only had it really a handful of times in the events that I've done, where a client has come to me and said, we want to support you to do your best work. So what is it that you need, if anything was possible, to do your very best work for us? And it's an amazingly powerful question, because it essentially says, okay, you're expecting me to do my very best work. So if I answer this question, I have to show up with my absolute A game and deliver everything. And it also allows people to suddenly see their event quite differently. So, I think about something where this isn't always possible at an event, but a client said to me, we're thinking about giving you like a 20, 30-minute slot, and we've got these 17 things we'd like to achieve during that. How do we help you do your best work to do this? And I said, well, to help me do my best work, instead of giving me half an hour with these people, give me 3.5 hours with 1,000 people, give me a big stage, a microphone and a big screen, and I'll make it happen for you. And their instant reaction was, who do you think you are, Madonna? We're not giving you 3.5 hours, just you and 1,000 people. I said, well, you asked me how I do my best work. That would be it. I'll work with you a little bit on the timings, but if you really want the best experience, we should go there. And if I don't deliver my best experience, don't pay me, and I will pay you back for the flights. And so we went to that space, and it was fantastic. And then they booked me to do the same thing for them internationally. So, you won't always have time on the schedule for that. So it does, open the question of, what can you do around that? But it's always worthwhile saying, what do you really need to do your best work so I can support you, rather than coming at it from, we need you as the speaker to do these things. So just flipping the question to see if there's a back and forth that can happen.
What type of behaviours can event organisers start to change in their speakers? Because obviously we can't just do one thing and it will completely change speakers' behaviour. But what types of behaviours should we be thinking about encouraging in the people who deliver our content?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something that comes up a lot, where I'll go to an event and I get sent something by the conference organiser of expected behaviours. And depending on how it's framed, the tone, sometimes it causes a worry for me, where I think some of the behaviours that are listed on here, it makes me worry about what are the other speakers that have been at this event before that might be speaking alongside me. And so, but it can also go the other way. The very best example I've seen of this, which people can access worldwide, is if you go to TED.com, and you look at I think it's called the TED Commandments. So it's 10 things that TED speakers do. And the way that I've seen it worded is it's so nice along the lines of, we're going to create something really exceptional and give you the opportunity with this, fabulously filmed event, which we'll be promoting. And in order to do that, the great speakers we've worked with, such as, presidents and directors, have found this is the great way to make this event happen, which is such as, stand on the red carpet, this circular piece, and we want you to be there so we can get a good filming of you, and there won't be lectern or auto cue and this sort of thing. But it's all worded along the lines of, we're going to make sure that you look like a superstar. And so when you're going to speak at TED, okay, I need to do those things. And I've actually seen very well-known, recognized speakers go to those events and ignore the TED commandments and look like a poor speaker as a result. So I saw someone where before their slot, all this sort of auto cue stuff was stuck up around them with a lectern. I thought, this is strange. This is not TED. This is not what people expect. And it just made them look a bit stilted and wouldn't. So sort of setting things up along the lines of, we're going to make sure you look like a superstar and give you everything you need in that way. And then hence, this is why this is the kind of culture that we've created of the event. That's a good way to go. And also, if there's some way of creating sort of photos, a show reel of past events to showcase, here are the fabulous people that we've had and the fabulous reactions that we've had. So the speaker themselves thinks, oh, wow, this is an exciting thing. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to listen to the culture behind this because I want to get there and look, feel, and sound as great as the other people who've been there before.
That's great. I mean, I'd really like to try and encourage the behaviour of speakers to prepare better for their presentations. And it is difficult to find that time to prepare if the speaker doesn't see the value in it. And it would be great to encourage that they are standing up in front of an audience. They're putting themselves up there. They really should be coming across as best as they possibly can. And the behaviour I'd like to change is to say to speakers, it's not about what you want to say, it's about what the delegates want to hear. And often those are two very different things. And that's a really important behaviour, I think, would you agree? A lot of speakers come up on stage and say, I really want to tell you this today. And the audience, well, that's not really that's not why we're here. That's not really what we want to hear about today, because it's structured in a completely different way. Would you agree that that's often an issue for some speakers and for some event organisers to work together to get over?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I was actually just on a conference call before speaking to you today, where I was hearing from an event organizer saying, you know, could you do some of this stuff? And I thought, well, yes, I can do all of that stuff, but let me just dig into that a little bit more to find out what are the challenges currently at the organization, what situations are people walking into, and why have they asked for me or someone to come along and help them with this? Because if I can understand their mindset, then I know that within the first couple of minutes I get on stage, I'll be able to connect with them in a much deeper way, and therefore I can take them further in my talk. So, you know, if there's some way to do that, which, you know, I think I've seen it done powerfully in the past, where delegates at the previous conference were interviewed at the end saying, hey, we're doing another event next year. What would you love to hear? What's key in your world right now? Or, you know, people are going to come to the event saying, this is what I'm looking forward to. This is my world. This is my challenges. These are my needs. So people can look at it as a speaker and think, this is what they're really looking for from me, and get a deeper understanding there. So you're sort of feeding them those ideas, those ways to connect with people. So I even see this from stage, where when I can mention certain industry terms or words related to works and events that are happening, even in jokes about getting to know who the characters are in the room, that I can mention, suddenly gets a rise from everybody, because they're thinking, you know our world, you know who we are, and therefore will listen far more deeply to what you have to say. I know that it can be a challenge for some people. Some people think, okay, I just want to come and do my stuff, and other top-end speakers might think, I don't have the time for that every time. But the speakers who I really respect and admire, I know take the time to do that, to figure out who is this person, who's in the room, how do I connect with them. The other piece that I would really encourage is to give the speakers a compelling reason to book the entire day to be at the event, or the couple of days to be there, rather than showing up just for their slot. I find this really worthwhile, where if I can see other speakers talking and engaging with the audience before I've gone there, if it's an event that I haven't been to before, an audience that I don't know, so I get a feel of, okay, where is the room? What's happening here? And even I get to see, well, what are the other speakers doing? What activities have happened? So that I know when I go in, I know exactly how I can sort of hit the wave of what's happening with the people in that room.
Well, that's certainly a behaviour that we'd like to encourage, is for speakers to realise that they'd get value out of the attending for, as you said, the day, most of the day, 2 days. And when you're watching a speaker and they say something like, Amanda covered this a little bit differently this morning, so I want to build on that, that's incredibly powerful for an audience.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
It's those kind of nested learning loops. People are going back in the head and thinking, oh yeah, that's right. There's another way to look at that. And that adds so much value. And from an organizer, you're thinking, yep, that really helps my attendees learn when they're able to do those little linking back. So it's really, really important. Can you think of any best case scenarios, or also maybe an example of when the for a speaker was, or when I suppose a support for you was really bad? So you mentioned TED as a really good example. Speakers, did anything happen to you where you thought, I'm not speaking at this event again, and maybe even I'm not going on to the stage right now? Any kind of worst case scenario that you could talk about?
Yeah, I've had all of them, I think, happen to me over the years. But if I go for ones that happen very commonly, firstly, something that I strongly recommend, which is maybe going to come as an unexpected comment to anybody listening or watching this, is as soon as I get information from a conference saying, here's the template for the slide that we want you to use at this event, I immediately think, okay, this is not going to be a great event. Because if for the 3 days, people are expected to look at the same slide, particularly if it has sort of, this is the font size we want your bullet points to be in, I think, no, this is not going to be a great session. And, bless the people who are coming up with those designs, but not understanding that actually that's not what people at that event are going to want or need. So that piece, is generally a red flag. And also, there's some events where I won't go back because there was a sense of not listening to the needs of the speakers, where this one happens to me quite a lot, where I take my Mac with me wherever I go, and I always say to people, in order to make sure the event runs perfectly for you, really smoothly, I'm going to keep my Mac with me on the stage. And the reason being, I've got copyrighted content of video and music that cannot be emailed to you. So just to make sure it runs well, if you just give me some connections on the stage, everything will run perfectly for you. And I tend to get back emails either saying, no, can you send it? Or I have to say, I actually can't send it. We can maybe do a different session, but I can't send what I was planning to do. But if you could just give me the connections, great. And 95% of the time, I show up and there's no connections for me on the stage. So I did an event recently, very prestigious venue, 300 people in the room, clearly a big budget going on. And, I'd spoken to the AV team the week before. They said, yeah, we've got everything you need. No problem. And got there on the day and they said, what we're going to do is we're going to use a memory stick to get your stuff off your laptop over to our... And I said, look, this isn't going to work because I've tried it before. I do 150 years. It's not going to happen. I need to get the connections up on the stage. And said, well, we'd have to de-rig the whole set and we haven't bothered to put the cables there, this sort of thing. And so I said to them, I actually take in my suitcase, I have 60 meters worth of cabling in my suitcase that I take everywhere around the world because this happens to me so frequently where I'll say, I've got the cables, I've got gaffer tape, I've got everything we need to make this happen between your sound desk and stage. And this event, I got there 3 hours early because I thought, I don't know what's going to be the situation. But the AV team said to me, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to find a workaround. It took them 2 hours and 58 minutes to agree to use one of my cables, and then took 60 seconds to get the event set up, and then we were ready to go. So I think making sure that people really tune into what is the need of this speaker. How do I make sure that they're performing at their best? Other nightmare situations that I've walked into is where I've had a miniature podium stage in the middle of a corridor where I was told, no, you're in a soundproof theatre, there's going to be people sitting there. And there's just literally people walking past. And I do activities in my talk, and I thought, how would any speaker perform well on this little podium? I'm not really sure how that's going to work. And also, that's worthwhile leading on to conversation on staging. So I've seen some people say, okay, in the past, people have been bored by the speakers. So let's come up with some really funky staging where we're going to have like a triangular stage with a catwalk coming off of it and 3 other stages that pop up in the audience, which very rarely can work. If they thought it through and thought, this is the reason we're going to do this, and this is the speakers who we've worked with before, they want this. But occasionally it just happens where the audience come in, they go, where do I sit? Is the person going to be sitting speaking there, or and they have to watch people uncomfortably walk up and down a catwalk? It rarely works. It can work, but I'd say don't use staging as a way to make the event better. Make sure you get the best speakers you can. And one of the ways to get the best speakers is go to as many conferences as you possibly can and book people who you've seen. You can also take a look at, if you booked a speaker who you really like, ask them who do they think is the best speaker that they've ever seen to build up that list. There, because if they've been treated well by you, they'll recommend the people who they really think that they look up to and admire. And you can always go back to those speakers and say, we loved what you did, but we've got a different need now, a different audience. Could you come back with some different content? So that's the other way around it. It's always to think, how do we get the very best speakers attracted here who have the right behaviors, so we don't need to make things work through the staging. They're going to bring that culture, and we'll gradually go upwards from there.
Great. You're right. The environment and the atmosphere that you're creating for a speaker is hugely important. I remember being asked to do some kind of change for an events team, and I had half a day of them to talk about how they managed the process of taking part at other events. And I got to the venue, and it was a church, and this was a December morning, so they had 2 or 3 bar heaters next to this tiny table in the middle of the church. And as soon as I walked into that room, I thought the chances of me affecting change in an environment like this is absolutely minimal. And it goes to the point of thinking, there's just no point in me doing this. But unfortunately, you have to kind of go through that process. But I think that's one of the moments when I realised what the job an event organiser was. It wasn't just to find a space where people can sit down. It was really the environment and the atmosphere. And I would certainly say my understanding of how to deal with the speaker changed completely when I started speaking. And would you would you encourage event organisers, who tend to be people who enjoy being in the background, would you encourage them to get up and start to present? And do you think that would give them a really valuable insight into the tricky role of delivering content to an audience?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you think about it this way, I've heard many actors say the best directors are people who have been actors because they know how to get the best out of people because they've been in that situation. So, if you take Ron Howard, who had a very successful acting career, who then has a very successful directing career, he's able to do that and work with people in such a way because he's been in that environment and done it. So, I encourage this with my own team, that they go out, if they're office-based, they go and see what's happening with those who are delivering a different event, so they can see, okay, that's what their environment is like, and therefore I better understand how to support them. So, even if you don't enjoy it, get loads of training on it, work on making sure that you raise the game too, because, as the event organizer, if you're going to introduce something, you want to set the bar of this is what we're expecting for everybody else. And then once you've done it, you'll think, okay, I know what worked and what didn't work there, and therefore I'll make sure that it's better for everybody in future.
Organisers do have to often have difficult conversations with speakers. And I was just wondering, is there any kind of practical advice that you could give for an event organizer who's a bit mad or a bit upset at the content that's about to be delivered, or the content that's just been delivered?
Yeah, great question. So I think, overall, my general experience when I've seen event organisers in place, it's so understandable. It's such a stressful position because, everything is reliant on you. For 100, 200,000, 10,000 people sometimes are expecting you to get everything to run together. It's highly stressful, and there can be stress from what people are saying or doing. And so I'd always say, before the event and during the event, do everything you can to manage the stress level that you have and the people around you and the team have, because that will then impact how the speakers are feeling and interacting with you. So I tend to go to quite a lot of events where I'll come up to the event organizer and see that they're under quite a lot of stress and think, okay, I'm just going to give this person some space here. But if you take that stress and for whatever reason then speak to the speaker, they may take that stress with them onto stage, or afterwards, if they did something where they didn't realize they'd gone in contradiction maybe to instructions, they come off the stage and they feel stressed, they'll think, well, I may not want to come back. So absolutely, I would say to people, think about, okay, what is my overall outcome here? My overall outcome is a wonderful, inspiring, uplifting event. I'm going to represent that from the moment I walk in the door in the morning to the moment that I leave. I will vent all my stress after I've left in a different kind of way. But when I'm there, game face is on at all times. I do talk to people about long, deep out breaths. So not in breaths, which is what a lot of people do, but actually pushing the air out of your body as if you're about to go into a really important situation. You just need to calm your heart rate down and then have those conversations. And the key question to think about with all interactions is just think, what's the biggest outcome here? And therefore, how do I need this person to feel from our conversation? Because sometimes as an event organizer, you need to go into a more commanding position, not in a dictating position, but a more commanding position of leading the event. Sometimes you need to be more the motivator behind things. Sometimes you need to be more uplifting and entertaining, or facilitating, what people need. So you have to be able to navigate that style when you're dealing with people, thinking, how do I help everybody else around me bring the very best? And if they're not doing that, how do I make sure that they understand that in a way that will make them feel, okay, I've got the message from you in a way that feels compassionate and collaborative.
That's great, because as organisers, we know that we can't be stressed, but we know that we operate in a very stressful environment. And I think anything that helps us just relax, and I know it's not helpful for someone to say, just relax, because that's when you're not relaxed. But I got loads from reading your book, and there's a lot in there that I think event organisers would benefit from reading. So as I said, I'll include a link in the show notes, but really it talks about those things that you said. How do you make sure that you're giving the impression that you want to give? And I absolutely love the line that you are reflecting your event. So if you're commanding, if you're facilitating, if you're motivating, if you're calm, you're likely to have an event that's similar. If you're panicky, worried, stressed, people will start to see that in your event. So I think that's fantastic advice. I know you've got much more really useful advice to give to organisers. Where can we find some of that, apart from the book? Is there anywhere else where we can get that advice from you?
Sure. So I'm aiming to give as much value online as I possibly can to people for free. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, then just look at on LinkedIn. My tag is Richard Newman Speaks, and I'm putting out an article every week now, about 500, 600 words. So it's a fairly easy read. It's on different subjects that I think are useful around speaking and events. Making sure that you've got the confidence you need in stressful situations. And they're proving really popular. So you can check those out on LinkedIn, connect with me, follow me with the articles. And the other thing too, if you're someone who likes podcasts, which I imagine people are if they listen to this, my new podcast is about to launch this month. It's called Born to Speak. And so people can check that out shortly on iTunes. But for now, if you find me on LinkedIn, Richard Newman Speaks, then you'll get the announcement about the podcast soon.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for your time and your advice today.